Good luck, Donald. You got this.
One nice orb of water.
Now it's like won't let me record unless it's standing up like this now. For some magical, mysterious reason. A little bit. Like if I do it like that. Okay. So I think I'm just gonna leave it like that.
Can you not expand that anyway?
Yeah, because it's kind of like the max height, I think. Oh, is that a thing that I can do?
Okay, and then yeah, like little foundation. Can we turn those down? That way it's just like more stability on the outside.
I'm trying to get it so it's like features more. Honestly, that's not too bad. We'll live with it. Okay, and it is not a...
Okay, that's him on the edge of the circle. What about... No.
Because I don't think it was like that earlier, too.
What about just moving this chair back?
I don't know why it's like so zoomed in. Like I feel like it wasn't that zoomed in earlier.
Is your mom?
There it is. There it is.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, that's
much
perfect.
better.
Okay.
Hello. Thank you everyone for attending TEDxGeorgiaTech. I know we started at 6:30, but I think we're going to start probably around 6:50 to 7, so feel free to hang.
So I think it was fine while my phone was charging. I can't even change the settings without canceling the whole thing all over again. Is your lock on? Would that be the reason for the... I unlocked it. Yes.
Do you want to come out and look at this machine real quick?
Yeah, sure.
No, I think it's going. Actually, maybe.
Oh, that's because it's on the power mode, right?
Isn't there a way to
Yes. Okay, I'll turn that off. I'm turning off low power mode. Hopefully that does it. Yeah, well, no, I turned it off. Okay, it doesn't.
It should not go out like that.
Hey, what's up? I just make sure that this is good, right? Okay.
You just stand in front of it the whole time.
Yep. Just right here.
Right there. You'd be like, okay, let me
Oh, go to settings.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that.
Go to settings and change.
Oh, let me.
Yeah, you got it.
You're standing right over there. Oh, is that good?
Seems good.
Okay, maybe. Like that. There.
You're talking about Seahawks?
I don't.
I don't see a hot guy right now.
Yeah, because now I'm here.
I don't see it.
You know when it's like the SpongeBob where it's like Squidward sticks his arm out, nothing. SpongeBob sticks his arm out, applause. That's literally like boo, and then he steps on. Yeah. So I'll just be sitting over there. This speaker coordinator sit here. You just cope and sit over there. I'll be fine. So then I can sit here while Don's fine. So fifth speaker, keep spacing. Coordinate speak. Quando non ci limita.
Yeah.
Right now, maybe it's because I'm not I'm good. Is that the camera? Is there someone who is going to... Yeah, no, or I can ask my friend. Yeah, if that would be
Okay. So just go
How much time is it going to be?
You're not allowed to eat that.
Oh no, that's for he took my K-pop too. Is that allowed?
Yeah, it's early. It's fresh batteries and it's now, for checklist purposes, that's camera audio. I'm going to check.
No, that's what I was going to say. Did he not talk to you?
That's on this.
This is a really nice seat. Like, see the speakers. I just realized I can hold tickets full level 1 on each, so I might be able to hold tickets. I need to find a day like go though to see if I can go with you. So we'll be going 3 times. What are the fun times would be fun? I also need to use my comp ticket because I forgot to use my comp ticket for any of the other ones. I have 1 comp ticket for myself and I didn't use it. So I forgot to use it for any of my other ones. But I think I'll check the spreadsheet. There's a spot. I can tell you which day has spots available for me to reserve. Because 2 can be reserved. So we're only going to send them a ticket with those tickets to give out only like walk-ups. Except casting who can reserve them.
Okay, hello. Welcome and thank you all for choosing to spend your Friday night with TEDxGeorgiaTech. We really appreciate it. We have 4 really amazing talks for you all prepared tonight. I guess a little bit about TEDx for those of you who don't know. We are an entirely student-run organization. We have a license from what we like to call Big TED to run events like this, where we give speakers, our students, and other people in the Georgia Tech community a chance to stand on kind of a real TED stage. Videos from this event are recorded and uploaded on TEDx official with the chance to be highlighted by TED.com. So we are part of a global networking community here. We're just a little corner of it, but it's a corner that I really love. A little bit about me. My name is Allie. I will be your MC tonight. Less importantly, I'm actually the executive director for TEDxGeorgiaTech. I've actually been doing this for a really long time. I gave a TEDx talk as a sophomore in high school nearly 7 years ago. I've been on the organizing team ever since, both at my high school and TEDxGeorgiaTech, making this my 13th ever event. That means I've seen a lot of really good TED Talks. It also means I've read a lot of not so good TED Talk applications. But also means that I'm being very, very genuine, and I know what I'm talking about when I say that we have 4 really incredible talks prepared for you tonight. Okay, I think that's all that I had. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce our first speaker, Donald G. Donald is a master's student in civil engineering who will be talking about how he downloaded social media for the first time at age 23 and how it changed his life almost definitely for the worse. In addition to being a master's student, he does a lot of stand-up comedy and music. We actually first met at an open mic night hosted by TEDx last fall. You should come to our open mic nights. They are super fun. And without further ado, here's Donald.
Alrighty, Allie, do I have to stand on this dock? Is that
Yes,
part of the
you
thing?
do.
Alright, cool. I've actually never watched a TED Talk, so this will be a new experience for all of us. Just kidding, by the way. So my name is Donald G. First of all, give it up for all the organizers one more time. So I was born a Gen Z, but raised like a boomer. I didn't have social media until I was 23. I didn't have a cell phone until I was 18. I didn't have access to the internet or TV to use until I was 18. And so I was the only kid that I knew in my middle school, high school, and college without social media. Some of you are probably wondering if I was Amish. No, I just grew up in Iowa. It's actually part of my family's corn farm, in case you're wondering. But I was the only kid that I knew in middle school, high school, and then even college without access to social media. So that meant I was completely out of the loop when it came to jokes, references, and the pop culture of my entire generation.
Get to Del Taco. They got a new thing called Free Shabakadoo. Free Shabak.
I saw this for the first time last year, and I have not been able to stop watching it since. Somebody asked me recently if I knew who Hannah Montana was, and I was like, what does she study? But, so I had no connection to my generation's culture. But what I did have was focus. I was not even close to the smartest person in high school, but I ended up graduating with some of the highest test scores, receiving one of the most prestigious scholarships as a full-ride academic merit scholarship to college. I had a very clear vision of what I wanted for my life, and I had never, up until this point, struggled with mental health. Part of that vision always included the performing arts. I've always loved music, and comedy, and just performing in general. And I decided that I was going to involve myself in social media because success in the arts in our modern society is success online. So I dove into social media for a week, and I was like, I'm going to spend a lot of time with this and try to figure out where potentially my creative pursuits might fit in. And I spent 6 hours a day, which is the average amount for people my age. But for me, that was an insane amount of time. I went from 0 to 100 very, very fast. And to clarify, the type of social media that I'm talking about is not like the old type of social media, like your mom, sharing stuff on Facebook, or your ex-girlfriend's Instagram. The type of social media that I'm talking about is a new form of social media, which is this short-form content generated for mass consumption. I think this is fundamentally different than previous types of social media we've experienced, and I'll get into why that's important a little bit later. So my experience with social media, like grief, had several stages. First was the bewilderment stage. This was the first thing I saw when I opened up Instagram Reels. And I can't say that I'm like inspired, but I will do that with the I love this, man. I also saw a lot of like shirtless men just staring at the camera, screaming like, "Stay hard!" Which is also something my girlfriend says about twice a week. I wonder if they're gonna edit that out in TED. I'm not sure if they will or not, but I'm really hoping that just ends up on the TED show. So after this, like probably like a couple hours of just bewilderment, like what am I seeing on this platform, came an almost instantaneous feeling of comparison. This talk is not an anti-social media talk, so don't worry, we'll get past this very quickly. But I almost instantly felt this feeling of like, you see someone write this really silly song with a very simple message and nice lyrics and whatever, and then the next day they wake up with 400,000 followers, they're on the news, and you just have this feeling like, I could do that, right? Like, and that's where the pursuit of social media success and creativity starts, right? It gives everyone that feeling almost, because you see things that you can do. Like, I can do that. But you don't just see one thing and then you go do it. You see hundreds of things in an hour and you end up doing none of them. And that leads to the next stage of confusion. When I was consuming this short form social media content, I saw so much music, comedy, beautiful people, pranks, political ideologies, and terrible world events, all in a very short span. And there were millions of people engaging with it, commenting on it, and influencing me, and I felt that almost instantly in my daily life. Like, my conversations started to take on a bit more of a political tone, and I would talk about things that I had seen and consumed in media rather than what I was actually experiencing in my daily life. The most concerning thing about this was not necessarily that I was consuming this, but that it made everything else that was important to me suddenly less important. The things that I loved, like playing piano or writing songs or conversations with friends, just couldn't really compete with the level of engagement and the feeling of urgency that I felt with this content. And this led me to a very intense state of confusion, wondering like, what do I like? What do I want to do? What do I enjoy? And that led to the depression stage. For me personally, I need a sense of purpose. Otherwise, I start to feel this like sense of sadness and agitation and eventually depression. And this was literally the first time in my life I've experienced actual depression, this idea, this feeling of hopelessness of like, does what I do even matter? Like, why would I care? And this is only after like 5 days of consuming social media in an average amount for my age range. And albeit I'd never had this before, so it's a very acute response. But I'm sure this happens, right, for people who are doing this for 10 years, which most of us in Gen Z are, right? It's 10 years chronic exposure rather than a very acute exposure. And that leads me to the kind of main point and thing I've realized while I was viewing this new form of social media, which is this question of interest versus consumption. We're told that our interests influence our consumption, right? If you like horses, you're gonna get a lot of horse content. If you like fitness, you're gonna get a lot of fitness content. But I think with this new form of short form content, it's reversed. Our consumption is now driving our interests. For example, I don't care about skiing at all. I have never wanted, I'm from Iowa, right? We don't have mountains, we don't even have hills, right? The extent of my skiing exposure is literally tying a rope to the back of a car and skiing on snow-covered streets, which is amazing. You should do it once in your life, it's very fun. But so I've never ever wanted to be a skier. For some reason though, social media thought that I needed to see a lot of skiing content. So I started to imagine myself skiing and doing these crazy skiing stunts, filming them and putting them online, not because I want to ski, but because other people would probably think that it was cool. This is a very benign example, right? Like, who cares? You're discovering new hobbies, whatever. But what if I was discovering new political ideologies, or new belief systems, or new cultural values? Are those the kinds of things that we want to be discovering through short-form social media platforms? Right? Like, there are so many examples of other content we've all seen, we all see every single day, of like questions of like masculinity, or gender identity, or just like angry politics in general on these short-form platforms. The exposure effect is a very, very commonly known impact thing that happens in human psychology. right? It's the idea that when you see something over and over, you start to like it more. Psychologist Robert Zajonc, I hope that's how you pronounce his last name, I haven't talked to him ever, states it very clearly: the mere repeated exposure of an individual to a stimulus is a sufficient condition for the enhancement of attitude towards it. Right? This is used by everything from authoritarian regimes to parents trying to get their kids to eat more vegetables. Which honestly, what's the difference? But this is so clear in that the more you see something, the more likely you are to like, agree, and fall in line with that thing. Now, pair massive amounts of this exposure effect, which we all obviously like, scrolling through short-form platforms is very clearly an intense exposure effect. Pair that with a very calculated inclusion of peer pressure through following numbers, through likes, through comments, and you've created the perfect system not to give people what they want to view, not to give people consumption driven by their interests, but to give people a way to influence your interests through your consumption. This is most obvious in kids, right? Like kids are very they're partially developed people. They have no idea what they want or what they're doing. We've all seen kids get sucked into this side of TikTok or this side of YouTube or whatever, and they just come out weird. You're like, where did you learn that? And to pretend that doesn't happen to us is just delusional, right? It may not be as acute or as fast acting, but obviously these same things are happening to our own psychology. Social media used to be this thing where it was something your parents or someone you knew shared something with you, or someone you wanted to know, you went out and looked for. But currently, with short-form platforms, half the time we have no idea what we're seeing and where it comes from. And then we have no clue what's coming next. So the cultural values that we're being exposed to, they're not created by a person or a group of people even. They're created by algorithms, right? You're not delving into a community of people who are interested in this thing and want to share it with you. You're simply being influenced by an algorithm to the values that it identifies you as most susceptible to. We've all heard the phrase, you become the 5 friends you're exposed the most to, right? But we now spend more time with social media than we do with our friends. And so I feel like the only real way, because social media now is so personal and it adapts to all of us, the only real way to look at this and its impact on our lives is to look at it like a relationship. And to me, an unfettered access to this short-form content, the only relationship that accurately describes that is like a pervy uncle at Thanksgiving. If you can get him going in the right direction, you can learn some cool stuff about 80s music or Marvel movies or insurance sales or whatever it is that he does. But if you just let him keep going, he's going to start talking about how hot your friends are. And he's going to start showing you pictures that he thinks are cool. And eventually, right, he's going to say things like, men weren't naturally evolved for monogamy. And that's why I cheated on your aunt. There's just so many things that we see and know where it's going, but we don't act on. We don't set boundaries for ourselves. So who you're becoming is no longer who you're around, but who you're watching, right? And so without a sense of purpose, boundaries, and intentions, these short-form social media platforms will turn the energy and the drive and the dreams you have for yourself into this never-ending circle of confusion and doubt. And the real question that I have is, are our interests driving our consumption, which then drive your values and drive the culture you're a part of? Or are we allowing consumption, which is dictated to us by algorithms of people who don't care about us at all, to drive our interests, that then drive our values, and then drive our culture? Which one of those are we choosing and why? Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Donald, for that incredible talk. That definitely did not make me psychoanalyze myself whatsoever. Because like a lot of us, I think, I downloaded TikTok in March of 2020 because I was very bored, and it was a lot of dancing and silly stuff, and I didn't really think twice about it. It was just another form of social media. Then here I am, 3 years later, and most of the videos on my feed are 30 seconds of a clip of iCarly and 30 seconds of someone playing Subway Surfers. And half the time, I scroll past because I can't even pay attention to that. So it's something that I think as a generation we do need to think about. And I think Donald described it as a friend or a person that you're interacting with. I've also describe as a place. Kind of this concept that's often used in city planning is this idea of third places. Think of the coffee shop in Friends or like the bar in How I Met Your Mother. Somewhere that you're spending with your friends that is not home and that is not work. And it's this idea that social media is now essentially that third place. That's where you're spending time with your friends. That's where you're spending your time. You're at home, but that's not really where your mind is. That said, everything I know about third places, I learned about on TikTok. So who am I really to speak? So next up, our speaker is Jeremy Ortman. Jeremy is a fourth-year biomedical engineering major, also from Florida. I also learned recently that he is a math TA because I was tabling on Tech Green, and I was like, hey, you should come to our TED event. We have a lot of cool speakers. And then the person looked at the speakers and said, that's my TA. And I was like, yeah, he's super cool. So Jeremy's going to talk about solitude during study abroad and kind of how he used music during that time to more or less transform his life and his relationship with himself and other people. I'm sure that we've all heard a million study abroad stories from that one girl who spent the summer in Barcelona and never shuts up about it. But I promise you that this is actually a story that's really worth hearing. Okay, welcome to the stage, Jeremy.
Focus on yourself. Those 3 words were repeated to me by friends and relatives whenever I got too caught up in someone else. I've been guilty, sometimes very guilty, of investing too much of myself in other people. Sometimes I would fall too hard for someone romantically, or I would spend more time trying to help a friend through their problems than trying to help myself through my own problems. But I had no idea what focusing on myself even meant, or how to do that. I was still seeing friends all the time, still falling too hard occasionally, still being surrounded by familiarity everywhere, every day. That all changed in 2022 when I did research in Japan for the summer and studied abroad in Spain for the fall. Those were the first times I had been out of the US, and phone calls and texts with friends and family could only do so much. In fact, the first time I entered my apartment in Japan, I had an anxiety attack. I happened to be the most isolated out of all the tech students on this research experience, and it set in right as I stepped through the door. Closest tech students were multiple train and bus rides away at the very least. My family was 13 time zones away. I could not read any of the signs outside my window. I was sitting there on the bare mattress, desperately trying to hold these feelings in. I kept searching through my phone for someone, anyone, to call, but it was 2 a.m. back in the US. My anxiety about being alone was being confirmed in real time by the fact that I was truly, truly alone. I couldn't even think about that word, alone. The first week of living on my own, because I would almost immediately start tearing up, even in public places. While I was abroad, I went to lab for research or to class, and hung out with the other tech students every now and then, but I still felt stuck. Most of my time was spent either locally commuting, or simply in my apartment, alone. I couldn't call my friends or my family that much either. As I said, they were asleep most of the time I was awake. All I felt was stuck in a country where I knew no one. And while I was able to get out of the apartment every so often, luckily enough sometimes for entire weekends, I didn't have the resources to be taking weekend trips all the time. I was just stuck. People had told me before to focus on myself. Now I really had nothing to focus on but myself. Since I had never done this before, tackling it head on along with the other challenges of being in a completely different country was daunting, to say the least. Thankfully, instead of finding someone to keep me company, I found something, music. And it not only helped keep me company, but it transformed the way I think about myself. In particular, 3 albums marked significant transition points during my time abroad, and I'd like to share them with you today. Now keep in mind, I will be giving abridged analyses of these albums since I have a time limit, and I can't pick apart every song in front of me for an hour. I know. I'm sorry. Without further ado, the first album is called You See For Yourself by IDK. I started listening to this in 2021, but the new context of solitude I faced in Japan enabled me to focus on the lyrics and actually understand IDK's message. The song that initially honed this focus is an interlude called Temporary Love. The song starts off with a conversation between two people, where the first person asks, do you think women are looking for a replacement of their father figure when they're in a relationship with a pimp? Just think about it for a second. But also, like, what? This question's so out of left field. I don't think anyone expected to hear this on the album. I certainly didn't. Either way, the second person responds, no. I think that all of us are just searching for love we ain't never had before. These lyrics, this line stuck out to me and really got the gears turning. This question was so misogynistic, and the answer completely flipped the question on its head. I had never even thought about this as a possible answer to this question I had barely considered. It's not about someone giving this hypothetical love, no. It's her searching for it. It caught me so off guard that I began to think about what kinds of love I might be searching for, what kinds of love IDK might be searching for, what kinds of love we might all be searching for. I thought about what I might even be missing now, a continent away from everything I found familiar. As I listened to the album, I began to identify 3 types of love that IDK was missing, and that I was suffering a lack of as well during my time abroad. External, internal, and parental. It's my mom and dad. Hi mom, hi dad. IDK addresses all 3 of these loves on the final track of the album, Cry in Church, the emotional climax of the album. The featured artist, Seven Streeter, sings about external love. Rather be a poor man with a little affection, everybody want to feel special. I mean, yeah, who doesn't want to feel special? In this case, it refers to external love, most likely from a romantic partner, but it can mean from friends as well. Next, IDK sings about internal love, love for himself, on the chorus. I'd rather be good inside than living happy on the outside. Then, on the first verse, I'm my only lover, I'm my only friend. Working on my flaws, I think I'm clocking in. I'm my only weakness, I hope I'm off on the weekends. A lot of lyrics, I know. But after about a month of spending the majority of my waking hours by myself, I realized that going home was my clocking in. Ironic. I now had to live with myself. I was my only friend at times, constantly working on myself to try to be good on the inside. We all want to be good on the inside, right? Like, duh, you spend the most time with yourself. Why wouldn't you want to work yourself out as soon as you can to feel more genuine? I know I'm making this sound obvious, but I want everyone to appreciate how incredibly long of a time it can take to figure that out for yourself. I was only able to figure it out for myself because I was in solitude so much, and I could relate to these lyrics. During the final verse, IDK addresses his deceased mother to talk about parental love. I wish you would talk to me nicely. I probably would love better. I wish you would read to me every night. I probably would read more. And all of this pain on my back gonna be having me looking like Igor. His mother not showing him love influenced his development and his love for others, as well as causing him years of pain. IDK echoes this further once Cry in Church transitions into the spoken word and closure, where he leaves a voicemail to his mother. We should all focus on understanding something that most of us can agree on, and that's the want for love. If his mother had been able to give him more love, he thinks with that, maybe he would have treated women a little bit better. Maybe he would have had a little bit of trust for other people. These lyrics put me in his shoes and help me see the world from his perspective for a moment. We all want love. If someone shows you love, it will multiply with how you yourself show it. I gained a newfound appreciation of my family and the love they gave me. They did talk to me nicely. they did read to me when I was younger. They only wished I were home to tell them all this in person. With this in mind, the next album that helped me during my time abroad is Candy Drip by Lucky Day. He sings about being in the throes of a relationship with a woman and ultimately arrives at a balanced conclusion on the final song, Ego. Loving someone and loving yourself is a balance. It's that external and internal love I was talking about earlier. You can be too focused on yourself that you can't show love to someone else, or you're in too deep and you can't take a step back to show yourself some love. Lucky is in the second situation where he's forgotten to keep himself afloat. He sings Selfless. I learned to love myself less, and now I felt it. Sometimes my heart gets helpless. As I've said before, I've had situations where I've been too into someone or too invested in helping a friend. I also may have related to these lyrics a little hard because I may or may not have been in one of those situations during my time in Japan, which I will neither confirm nor deny. Thank you for asking. Either way, I stopped looking out for myself, which is unhealthy for both me and whomever I was too invested in. Bucky is just now becoming self-aware of this behavior in his own relationship and is working to change it. Girl, I want you all the time. I've been loving on you blind, and that ain't a free throw working on my ego. On some of the final lyrics in the album, he concludes, no one can break me. No one can make me. You're my ego. No one can save me. No one can change me. You're my ego. Loving someone and love is not a free thing that you can just do blindly. Here, Lucky is taking back his self-control, his ego, healthily. He decides who he gives his energy to. He is declaring that he's putting his ego aside for her. Of course, as I was crying along to this one in my shower in Japan, I was able to repeat it to myself by singing along. No one can break me. No one can make me. Similarly, only you can save you. Only you can change you. No one else can do that for you. At the height of my listening to Candy Drip, I flew back home for my painfully short 3 weeks of reuniting with my friends and family. I missed everyone so much, and the normalcy of being with them made leaving again all the more difficult as I flew to Spain for round 2. I started sharing an apartment with landlords who, to put it very nicely, set a new world record for disagreeing with me about anything and everything. While I was physically living in an apartment with other people, these landlords still somehow, in their excellence, made me feel more alone than when I was living by myself in Japan. As October of that semester rolled around, I stayed trapped in that tiny room of classwork, grad apps, and avoiding interacting with the landlords. I could feel my mental health slipping. Then, at the end of that awful October, Smino released Love for Rent. This was the album that made everything click for me. The first song I'll highlight, Defibrillator, has a simple but repeated chorus, but man, did I need to hear it. I'll be loved when none's around. Everyone who had ever shown me love was an ocean away, but I finally took control of my own feelings and allowed myself to love myself when no other love was around. I mean, I had always thought I was all right. This marked a turning point in letting myself experience healthy self-love. I had realized that I had looked for validation from external sources my entire life. Parents, classmates, friends, romantic interests. I had never thought about reaching inside and showing myself love. So I started doing things that would consciously fulfill me, which in Spain usually meant an investment in some ice cream, or buying a basketball to play on a nearby court. And as the landlords continued to just go above and beyond in the aggravating department, and as finals and grad app deadlines drew even closer, the lows started getting less low. Smino applies this self-love mindset to the final song on the album, We and Love You. Give so much of myself to others, I'm running out of self for my own stuff. But as long as you put you first, you don't gotta rehearse, because I'm gonna do me. IDK and Lucky Day have been inching me closer and closer and closer towards this conclusion, but these lyrics give me that final push across the finish line. I realized that I could do both, have the capacity to love someone and still maintain love and energy for myself. Healthy relationships are formed on this balance of external and internal love. This internal love carried me across those finals, deadlines, and landlord squabbles to my return home, where my self-love joined the support system I already had here. So, now that I've talked about me, how does this relate to all of you? Well, I cannot overstate this. Self-love is so important. You are in control of yourself. You are the #1 in your life. Everybody want to feel special? That's all me, baby. I got that right here, on lock, down pat, 100%. Self-love was such a super hard lesson for me to learn and integrate into my life, and I'm still learning it even now. During those tough times, though, I can fall back on the love I have for myself to keep me going. I now know how to properly focus on myself, because I love myself. But don't fall into the trap of being too self-centered. I say healthy self-love. What does that look like? It starts with self-care. Proper hygiene, eating well, sleeping well, taking some time to breathe. That is an index card from my room that reminds me to take deep breaths, force of habit, and it works. There are more overt ways of showing your self-love too. Go outside for a walk, get some exercise. You can journal. I journal, not as often as I should, but I do. Journaling isn't the only way to do this, but it allows me to acknowledge my emotions and areas for growth without letting myself be defined by them. This was one of the barriers to my own self-love that I managed to push through while abroad. On the flip side, sometimes you gotta hype yourself up a little. Celebrate your accomplishments. That test grade comes in, and you did better than you expected. Oh, genius! That's all me, right here. It sounds really silly, but I promise it really helps. Self-love also means being self-aware and knowing how you operate. For example, I've learned that I'm most productive when I'm in my room, got some tea going, some nice music, my lamps on, it's just great. Sometimes it means saying no when you have to. Sometimes, if you can believe it, it means being by yourself, taking a step back, just take some deep breaths, recharge, just vibe for a bit. Despite hating my solitude, I learned that sometimes it's okay to be alone. Solitude doesn't have to be lonely. Knowing how you operate also includes the music you listen to if you choose to do so. No matter what we listen to, music is powerful and it can teach us things we never even guessed about ourselves. My music taste has definitely shifted over the past year, and that's okay. We're all growing, we're all changing. The least we can do is love ourselves during that process. And who knows, maybe finding your music will help you find yourself along the way. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Jeremy, for his very insightful talk. As I mentioned earlier, now we are going to shift into a 10 to 15-minute intermission. Go to the bathroom if you have to, grab some food. I highly encourage you to participate in all the activities that we have, and also do some networking, and not the fancy, like, I want a job networking. Talk to people that you don't know, because after all my time doing this, the people who come to these events and the people speaking and organizing these events are the coolest people that I know. So please get to meet some of them, have some conversations, and we'll see you back here shortly.
Who's getting unmiked back there? When Saucy comes back, can you tell him to see them about
Yeah.
video people? Yeah.
Sure.
Oh, really? I saw it in the flyers.
I mean, I didn't relate this much. Especially like at this time.
You guys are like all
Yeah. The next one is gonna be a bit heavier on the, you find out. Yeah. And the last one's gonna be uplifting, so we're gonna hit it with like a good one.
I want to go do a.
I like saw it, but I was like, no,
this if you need to speak up. Good luck. At the end of the day, even if you slip up somewhere, it's your like ideas and your story, right?
Yes.
So you don't like no one else knows you better than you. So if you like blank completely, you just gotta start talking about yourself and how you feel and like your family or your background, right? Because that's like the root of this. That's like what's driving all these stuff. It's your history, your story, your family story, your people's story. So go on to that. Yeah, you have to double one. Yeah. Dude, I was literally eating popcorn.
That went right here, but actually good. Like, in the middle.
If you want to like get everyone started, I can find it. I mean, I'm sure it's just in the back.
long for like 5 minutes. I thought that was weird.
Okay, so before we introduce our third speaker, I did want to talk a little bit about the theme for this event and how it kind of connects to our theme from last event. Okay, so last time we had a salon that had the theme potential energy. We wanted to kind of have a continuous overarching theme, I guess, of energy throughout the year, split into potential and kinetic. I am a liberal arts student who never took physics, so I'm explaining this in very high level terms. But potential energy is energy of position. You know, like you're high up, and therefore you can have energy by falling, but you haven't actually gotten there yet. So that was what our kind of false launch focus on is. How do you amass that potential, put yourself into a position to achieve what you want to achieve? And then, kinetic, this salon, is supposed to focus more on, once you have that energy, how are you channeling it into something productive? Or how are you using that in a way that is going to benefit you in the long run? So that's kind of the context in which possibly these talks were inspired by, or how they may be loosely connected. So just something to keep in mind kind of throughout the rest of the night. Okay, so our third speaker, Sasi, is a fourth year mechanical engineering major. He grew up in Dubai before coming here for college, and really considers himself at the intersection of a lot of different cultures growing up. So he's going to talk about online discourse today and how he believes that this term and idea of wokeness has really become more about performative activism than actual action. I've also been asked to issue a trigger warning for war and conflict, so if there's something that you might be uncomfortable with, feel free to step out. We won't be affected. But without further ado, here is Sasi.
I was born in Colombo, the capital of Sri Lanka. That's where we are, right under India. My family moved to Dubai when I was 4 years old, and I grew up there my whole life. But my hometown is in Jaffna, the northern province of this country. My mom and dad grew up in a small town of Belvedere. And every summer I visit my grandparents, uncles and aunts, and we stay in my granddad's house. I used to eagerly look forward to these summers every single year. But on the year of 2009, I didn't go back home. It was the year that around 70,000 of my people were killed by the Sri Lankan government. And this day was dubbed as the Mullivai Massacre. A little backstory about Sri Lanka. 74% of the population are Sinhalese, the dominant ethnic group. And 11% are Sri Lankan Tamils. I'm a part of the latter ethnic minority group. The Sinhalese are usually Buddhist, and the Tamils are Hindus, displaying significant linguistic and religious divisions. During the year of 1983 to 2009, there was a civil war that happened between the government, which was dominated by the Sinhalese, and against the LTTE, the Liberation Tigers of Tamil Nadu, a separatist group that fought for the independent Tamil state in the northern and eastern regions of Sri Lanka. The war officially began after a day of riots that happened in Colombo, where they targeted Tamils. And it went on for a little under 3 decades. It ended on May 2009 when the Sri Lankan government announced that they had killed the LTTE leader. During the years of early years of conflict, coverage was relatively limited, with reports focusing mostly on the northern regions of the country. But as the fighting intensified, and particularly after the government launched a major military attack in 2008, coverage increased significantly. But it was too late. It was too late because there was thousands of civilians dead. And many of them were innocent men, women, and children, victims of a massive military genocide. And around 2 million Tamil civilians were displaced as a result of these 3 decades of war. Most of us escaped to countries such as Canada, UK, and other European nations, and are still living there. I want to show a picture of my family when we visited a home for the disabled in Maine. And right there is a little girl named Anushka, sitting on the wheelchair. I remember the day when I went to meet Anushka's mother, was the woman holding her hand. I asked her what grade of school was she studying in, and her mother said, "Oh, Anushka can't go to school here. She has a mental disability and she can't communicate the way that we do." Anushka has a cerebral paralysis, and this was because her mom when pregnant, was hit by shrapnel from a shell launched by the Sri Lankan government forces. War affects both sides equally, and I deeply empathize with all those affected by it. But sometimes it feels like certain groups, certain communities, certain races are affected more, especially the ones that are oppressed. Now, you may be thinking, oh, why didn't the international world or community intervene? That's because the United Nations failed to act strategically in a timely manner to protect the civilians. And they lost a 10-month window of opportunity to evacuate these civilians to safer areas. This went on for another 14 years. There was no accountability held against the Sri Lankan government for their war crimes. And why is that? Because there was no international pressure on these decision makers. When I was doing more research about this topic, I came across an article written by Dr. Martin Binder, and he quotes, "The role of the media plays an important role. The media plays an important role in the life of the council, often producing international pressure as action to address man-made disasters." This proves that the widespread public focus adds pressure to decision makers to act strategically due to the fear of inaction, due to the fear of reputational damage. There are countless other stories like Anushka's, but their stories never reached the mainstream media. And I've always asked myself this question: what could have been done differently to bring these stories to light? Well, there is social media. It's quite instrumental, right? Quite instrumental in raising awareness. Nowadays, TikTok, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram dominate as the source of news, ranging from talk show hosts giving the daily news to short-form content reels that discuss heavy, hot topics posted by popular influencers. The easy access to these platforms, along with the anonymity and distance provided by social media, creates a space where people can effortlessly express their opinions. And mobilize towards a cause. To remain aware or to stay woke. The term "stay woke," it originated from Erykah Badu's 2008 song, Master Teacher, as a call to remain vigilant and aware about the current systemic injustice and oppression. But let's take that same definition, and where I said people can effortlessly share their true opinion and mobilize anyone around any cause. That can quickly create an environment where people are quick to call out and cancel those who express views and opinions that don't align with the current progressive narrative. This is the current state of woke culture. It's become a toxic phrase that is used in situations far from its original intent and purposes. And I believe that the continued use of this phrase can erode free speech and, most importantly, bring focus away from the pressing issues that the world needs to address. Let's talk about the problem with social media, or problems. There's a lack of nuance, widespread spread of misinformation, and performative activism. This is, I think, in my opinion, the biggest problem. And cancel culture. I find the views expressed by Hannah Cross quite perceptive of the current state of the internet. Whenever images are shared on social media, whenever they are shared with an emotive language, they are often anchored to one political, religious, or corporate stance, putting them in this tiny box, leaving no room for any other ideas or viewpoints, making it monotheist. Definitely have to look this word up. It means having only one meaning. This creates a culture of promoting a divisive, this creates a culture where people care more about being right than finding common ground. And in the pursuit of clicks and engagement, we can find that often there's a widespread of misinformation that can occur. And this can lead to further amplification of conspiracy theories and false narratives. In November 2021, there was an online trend that blew up on Instagram, where for resharing a post or story of your pet can lead to a tree being planted in return. Sounds really noble, doesn't it? But no, it was a scam. It was a complete scam where it was orchestrated by a 23-year-old CS major from Florida to sell necklaces at a high market. The reason why the scam became so successful was because of performance activism coupled with spread of misinformation. The task of reposting a story or a post is seemingly simple and is often intended for follower growth and social capital rather than actually supporting a cause. It requires the lowest amount of engagement to show contribution. Posting a hashtag or sharing a video can raise awareness, but it doesn't create actual change on the ground. Let's talk about hashtag Black Lives Matter, triggered by the George Floyd tragedy. BLM's online presence had an insane positive impact, but it was riddled with performative activism. Blackout Tuesday is the epitome of performative activism. What started as a movement to amplify Black voices, creators, videos, and educational information on Instagram was drowned out by 24 million Black Square posts. In my opinion, performative activism is worse than silence because it takes attention away from the real conversations and issues. And finally, we have cancel culture, which is enabled by social media. An individual is targeted and publicly shamed for expressing their opinion or engaging in behavior that is deemed unacceptable. This leads to a culture of fear and self-censorship. If the international community gave as much attention to the Tamil community of Sri Lanka as they're giving to celebrities being cancelled over 10-year-old tweets. It could have helped more people. But that wasn't the case. Around the many numerous posts that have been shared, there are some advantages to woke culture. They do have their perks. The immense support and sympathy shown by the world towards the Ukrainians helped them gain international coverage. It is one of the more adequate and helpful media coverage that enabled them to gain as much support from the international world as they did. Another great example is Iran. Despite discrimination, Iranian women are highly educated and have broken many barriers in professional fields. They have pushed for discriminatory laws to be abolished, such as the dress code and sexual harassment, and achieving some reforms. But they have also faced arrests, torture, imprisonment, and even death sentences. As grim as this situation was, and still is, the protests that happened in the Western world helped them gain international awareness and support. This is where we're seeing the responsible use of woke culture and online social media platforms to create awareness and support for a righteous cause. Now, woke culture remains still a huge question mark. It stemmed originally as a call to remain aware and vigilant about systemic racism and oppression. But it's not always logical to be that way, right? You can't always show your true opinion to your audience. Sometimes it's important to express your progressive nature in certain situations to avoid unnecessary conflict and debate. But if your outrage and support is selective to certain communities, certain races, and groups, then you're not really staying awoke. You're being ignorant towards the real crises that need desperate attention. So, I'd like to leave you all with a simple reminder and some simple steps to create more nuanced spaces and that encourage people with diverse perspectives to be involved in. First, everybody has the freedom to believe in what they want. There are multiple truths to every single social justice issue. Nothing is black or white, there are a lot of gray areas. Being respectful and civilized during intense, heated topics is important. And finally, focus on creating meaningful impact within your reach. Social media companies need to take more responsibilities. They need to take more responsibility in promoting accurate information as content over sensational and divisive ones. Ultimately, it's up to us to tackle these issues plaguing the world right now. Actually showing up to a protest is much harder than posting a hashtag. Or donating real time and effort to a cause is much harder than clicking a button. But we can do it. It's the time for action, not distraction. Thank you.
Okay, so obviously as I'm emceeing, I've been reading the talks beforehand and kind of reflecting on what I can say afterwards. Like what piece of that do I connect to that I can share with you all? And you know, I've cracked some jokes and had fun, but I think this is one that I don't really want to joke about. I want to talk about how it's easy to talk about loving yourself. It's easy to, you know, take a second look at your Instagram or TikTok because those are generally fun anyway. I think this topic is a little bit heavier because it's one that I feel some guilt about, or some genuine looking back at my actions of the past as something that I do genuinely have to change and get better, and it feels really overwhelming, right? Because it feels like it's this problem that I can't do much about. Because it feels like something that just seems too big, and even if I change, is that really going to affect the actions of everyone else on the internet? So, in case any of you all are feeling that way, I just want to leave you all with this reminder that it's okay to start small. It's okay to take a second with yourself and just say, what is one or two things I can do the next week to be better? And after that, what is another habit that you can change? And just kind of spread the idea, share it, and that's ultimately how we make progress. Okay, so moving on, I'm going to introduce our next speaker, Henry Wallace. Henry is a fourth-year industrial engineering major. You know, when we were putting together the program for the Salon, I was like, wow, we really just do have 4 men speaking. But don't worry, there is diversity because they're all 4 different types of engineering majors. But seriously, if you're on idea, I would love to have you. Yeah, okay, so Henry's going to talk about how taking a different approach to comparison and competition ultimately changed his life, this time for the better. And one thing I think I want to talk about is that Henry is a really interesting person. In addition to being a full-time student, he is in a band and also is an ultramarathoner. So it might feel easy to compare yourself to him and be like, why am I not doing all of that? But I think, and you'll learn, is that his dreams are not yours, and that comparison is never going to get you to that same place because you don't belong in that same place. But he's going to say it a lot better than I will. So welcome to the stage, Henry.
Oh man, I hate losing. Doesn't losing suck? Isn't it the worst? Yeah, okay. Does anybody agree with me? Just raise your hand real quick. Losing sucks? Awesome, a lot of hands. Phenomenal, phenomenal. For everybody with your hand down, who you guys, I'm assuming, apparently hate losing, or sorry, like losing, let me convince you real quick how bad losing might be with these scenarios. So, you just lost a game of checkers to your 6-year-old niece. What is that? Yeah, I mean, look at his face. He's not very happy about that. Or you swore you were the ping pong goat, and then your friend demolishes you 21-1. It's a bad feeling. Or it's fall of 2022, and you're watching on your TV screen, and you just watched Georgia Tech lose to Ole Miss 42-0. It sucks. So, losing is bad. And a particularly bad loss can leave us thinking, oh man, am I a loser? And the answer to that question is yes. You're probably a loser. But I will argue that everybody in this room is likely a loser as well. And chronic losers at that. Stick with me. So, a lot of times we compete in these kind of competitions in our head against other people without even realizing it. So, a good easy example for this is, it's kind of like when you're walking to class, and you see across the street somebody on the sidewalk walking the same direction that you're walking. And I don't know about you, but sometimes my lizard brain, my primal lizard brain, goes, is this a race? Did you just challenge me to a race? And then suddenly, like 5 seconds later, you're like power walking as hard as you can. And you show up to class, and you get sweat under your armpits. You know, your asthma is flaring up, and you're just exhausted. But going beyond the sidewalk example, a lot of students here at Tech have the same kind of comparative instincts. And with metrics like test scores or like internship offers. And it's easy to do this. And also at Tech, with people who are incredibly bright, these competitions can be very easy to lose as well. So it's easy to sometimes feel after a series of losses that you are a chronic loser and not have any idea why you feel this way. Something about this kind of competition, something that I'll call tonight unconscious competition, it's where you are essentially competing with others all the time without any conscious effort to do so. And when you're doing it, it's unfair because the person you're competing with has no idea they're competing with you. And so this kind of unconscious competition can make us feel bad after a series of losses, but it can also drive us to do things and waste our time doing them. Like, For example, when I was a freshman, one night late in the library, I was studying for a Calc 2 exam, as you do when you're a freshman. And I noticed that at this point in the night, it was just me and some other person on the floor. And my lizard brain kicked in again. And I was like, okay, I'm going to stay in the library longer than he will. I will outstudy him. I will be a study genius tonight. And so it worked. I outstudied this guy, but I was up until like 3 or 4 in the morning. Next day, went to go take the Calc 2 exam. I got a fat 64 because I was so sleep deprived. Meanwhile, that guy who's on the floor probably got a great night's rest and had no idea I even existed. So, if unconscious competition can drive us to waste our time and make us feel really crappy about ourselves, what's the solution? And that's where I say it's to control, alt, and delete how we compete. But before I get into that and what that means, I want to share with you all a little bit about my story and why unconscious competition is so critical to me. Well, I graduated from a performing arts high school, just like Victoria's. We still have to do math. But I graduated from a tiny performing arts school of less than 100 people and into a freshman class of around 4,000 people. It was a big, scary STEM school, and naturally, I felt it hard to relate to a lot of my peers. It seemed like everybody around me had this rock-solid STEM foundation that I didn't have. And they were prettier, fitter, cooler, good-looking, and swaggier, like everything. It was all in my head. And quickly, all these, I found myself comparing myself to everybody, my roommates, the random people I met in the dining hall, and all the beautiful and talented geniuses that Georgia Tech posts on their Instagram. And it was horrible. All these kind of losses where I felt beneath my normal noisy day-to-day, and after about a semester and a half of this, if you were to compare my brain to like a boxer in these kind of fights, it was now bloodied up and desperate for victory in the final round. It was hell-bent. And it even bent my own reality in order to create a fight that I could win. Now, the factors that lead to mental illness are incredibly complicated. They're a blend of environmental factors as well as genetic predispositions, which make them difficult to analyze where they come from and why. But I will say that the stress that I experienced as a freshman that year inevitably led to the bipolar and psychosis diagnoses I would receive months later. The stress from all these events fed that growing mental illness in the back of my mind and made me believe that I was some kind of scientist making discoveries about the fourth dimension that would make me famous, more famous than my peers. Of course, these discoveries were nothing but logically unfounded manic epiphanies, where I would interpret normal things like cloud patterns and hair clippings as signs from a higher power that were deep keys to understanding the universe. My mind was literally all in on trying to beat my peers. And then things unraveled. That spring semester, I had multiple psychotic episodes that pulled me out of school and into intensive therapy programs. I left school to live at home. And when I did, I felt my ego, my identity, enter a free fall. I felt that I couldn't compete anymore. And I wanted to drop out of school. And eventually, my free fall landed, and I was in rock bottom. And now, for anyone who wants some kind of visual aid of what rock bottom might look like, here's a photo of me taken with my 2 sisters that Christmas break. So, a little bit of context, my wisdom teeth were taken out the day before this photo was taken. But the energy is exactly what I'm going for here. I'm sitting, my body language is crossed. I look so angry from the sidelines. And it was ultimately a horrible time in my life. Now, I'm here. So, what happened? Well, when I came back to school, I kept semester after semester, things kept improving, and I can say now that life has been better for every one of the semesters since that dark point in my life. And I want to explain to y'all today how that happened. The first thing is that I have the best friends and family in the entire world. Not that it's a competition, but I am so grateful for the support I received in that time of my life. And if I had not received that support, I could be in a much darker place right now. But second, I started commuting to school. And now, commuting was naturally a very time-intensive activity. After classes, I would bike to the MARTA station, hop on the train, get off the train, and after that, I'd hop on a bus, get off the bus, and then I would walk from there to my house. But strangely enough, it was just what I needed. So there was never a point in my life where I was where it was as easy as it was to socially stay in my lane. I would show up for classes, I would catch a meal with friends, and then I would go home. I ended up spending a remarkably less amount of time around tech students, and thus I spent a remarkably less amount of time habitually and unconsciously competing with tech students. In that semester, I took a step back, and I looked and I saw how my environment influenced my habitual competition. But then I took another step back, and I thought about how I could influence my own habitual competition. And that was a game changer. From there, I realized I had more autonomy than I thought. I could decide when I competed and when I didn't. And when I did that, I realized that I was on a much better trajectory towards the future. So, I know we all have these same kind of lizard brains in our heads that makes us do things that we don't want to do. So tonight I'm hoping to share some of my advice and tips for how you can better manage and control your lizard. So, does anybody know what the first step is? Can I get anybody shout it out? First step, what it might be. Yeah, excellent. Nice, you guys did your homework. Fantastic. So the first step is to control when you compete. And so for me, it helped dramatically when I was able to leave college for a few months and then kind of look back on my life and see, oh, I was doing all this and all this. So I would advise anyone who, if it's possible, to leave the environment where you normally compete in. So this could be like your lab, where you work, it could be your dorm room, or all of the above. But once you identify this, it's easier to get out of that and look and analyze better how you're competing. And the focus of this is being realized when and where you compete. So I don't know if anybody in the audience checked out once I started hating on competition. The point of this talk is not that competition is a bad thing. I mean, competition has led us to amazing innovation in both medicine, engineering, and got us to the moon. And Darwin would argue that there would be a different species giving a TED Talk today if we did not all compete. So I'm not going to say you shouldn't compete, but you can also alter how you compete. So instead of taking these competitions that are in your head currently, it can be helpful to put them into the real world, to find rules between you and your competitors that you have not done before. And so, one thing that's inherently unfair about unconscious competition is the fact that the person you're competing with doesn't know you're competing with them. And so if you're able to put it into the real world, the competition can be much better for both sides. And so, okay, this sounds great. What does it actually look like? Well, last year, my roommate and I, we both wanted to eat less sugar. And we were also both acutely aware that the other person was trying to eat less sugar. So what would happen is these kind of awful behavioral patterns where like I would walk in on him eating cake and I'd be like, gotcha, and then I'd like make fun of him. And then vice versa. It was just not a healthy kind of thing. And we were very kind of punchy about it. So I realized I could create and gamify the situation in both of our heads into something that I call the sugar tracker, which looks like a pretty insane thing we put on our fridge. But it helped to define what a win and what a loss was, and it helped both parties understand what that meant. And we've both eaten less sugar since that day. So that's alt. The last part of this puzzle is delete. So delete, how you compete. So what delete, I guess what I would call the principles of deletion are that a conversation can be all it takes to extinguish a dangerous competition. So one of those two different kinds of conversation tools is speak competition into and out of existence. So a great example of this is when I was applying to be a speaker here today, I learned that my roommate was also speaking today. He told me, he said, oh, I'm also applying. So I said, great, that's great for you, awesome. And then as I was writing my application, thinking about it, I was like, that is not great for him. I hope that I get this instead of him and that he doesn't get it at all. And I was like, wait, this is perfect. And so, I did something kind of crazy. I walked up to him, and I told him exactly what I was feeling. And then in that moment, there was almost this camaraderie. And he was like, great, let's try to help each other figure out the best way to give this application and this talk. And now, I'm pleased to say that my roommate is the beautiful Donald G, who spoke first here tonight. Having him help me and me help him was mutually beneficial. And I don't think my talk would be a fraction of what it was without his help. And now, for the second deletion method. It's about telling someone that you admire them. Sounds kind of crazy. But it's definitely a great way to ease any kind of tension in a relationship and put it into a continental slugfest between you and someone else. So, recently, I told a friend when I was, after months and months of kind of, insecurity, I told him that I thought he was smarter than I was, which is kind of scary. But after that, it was like this damn it didn't burst, and he felt comfortable telling me nice things about myself. And we had this lush discussion about habit, about talent, about intellect, and what it meant to be smart. And we walked away from the conversation with a much deeper respect for one another. It was amazing. And what I would say is that it's scary to tell somebody things like this, but it has only ever led me to better relationships with my rivals. And now there's an asterisk kind of behind this whole thing. It's okay to actually have this competition be in your head, but you have to kind of say, I'm fine with my head. I don't know what this guy's talking about. It's cool, but you have to agree to the terms and conditions behind unconscious competition, and that is, it is inherently unfair. The person you're competing with has no idea that they're competing with you, and to assume that they would play the same rules in your head is inherently a bad thing. So whatever victory or loss that is the outcome of this competition must be taken with an appropriately sized grain of salt. All right, so before I end tonight and you guys go out into the world and start thinking about how you can change how you're competing, I want to share one more visual aid with you. Okay, it's the same photo, but at a different point this time. My pose and this guy over here is exactly how it looks and feels to unconsciously compete. People around you are happy, they're having a great time. But their success is your failure in your mind. This is awful. Instead, be this guy. Take the people through your life who are happy and joyful for their success, and be happy and joyful with them. Their success is not your loss. So, how is unconscious competition affecting your life? Is it paralyzing your relationships? Is it paralyzing you? Give your life the motion, the energy, the freedom it deserves, and control, alter, and delete how you compete. Thank you.
We have people who spend their Tuesday night making cake pops for everyone. That's part of my life with this team. These people are incredible. Thank them, say hello, have a conversation. They're all awesome. Then also shout out to Best Studios who are videographing for us tonight. Thank you. It was awesome. Before you go, I want to leave you with one last thought. The hashtag that tends to be around TED is ideas worth spreading. So obviously we believe that all of the ideas I've shared tonight are worth spreading. That's why we gave them this platform. But now it's up to everyone else in this audience, right? So, you know, we can have this idea of being on the stage tonight and then that's where it ends. Or we can all continue to think about these ideas, share them further, implement them in your everyday life. So I'm going to challenge each and every one of you to take one part of every talk that you heard tonight. Maybe it's something that really stuck out with you and inspired you, or something that was like, oh yeah, that is totally me and I need to work on that. Or maybe it's something that you disagreed with, that you want to think more about in the future. One thing from every talk, think about it for a week, and talk to one person who wasn't here tonight about that idea. Deal? Yeah. Okay, awesome. With that, thank you again for all of you who attended any of our events this semester. We'll be hanging out here for a little while longer. Feel free to do all the activities and all the fun stuff, take some photos. I think that's all. Good night.
Amazing job. I'm very, very, very proud of you.
Speaker did. Congratulations.
Oh, that's so sweet.
To the last talk.